Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Tiger Family Talks webinar. We are excited to be discussing with you tonight, supporting your tiger as they return home for the holidays. We are going live on Facebook right now, too. So I'm going to give everybody just a moment to catch up on Facebook who's joining us. But in the meantime, I would love to go over just a little bit of housekeeping for our Zoom. So if you're joining us on Zoom, thank you. Hi, hello. We are so excited. We have two features. The chat feature is a great place to utilize if you want to just insert an emoji, let us know something about yourself, or say hello. The Q&A feature that you'll see at the bottom in that black taskbar is the perfect resource to use if you have a specific question for one of our panelists or you would like to ask a question of our staff. Make sure that you turn on all panelists and attendee when you're using the chat feature. And then if you're on Facebook, thank you for joining us as well. We're excited to have you. You can just go ahead and comment right below with your questions, your comments, anything that you want to say. So let's go ahead and test all this out. I'd love to know where everybody is coming from. So if you can, if you're on Zoom, let us know in the chat, where are you from? And also, what classification is your student? Do you have a freshman tiger, sophomore, junior, senior, or maybe even a grad student? Same thing goes for Facebook. If you can let me know in the comments, where are you from and what year is your tiger? And we'll see that as they roll in, so y'all keep them coming. While you have those coming in, my name is Lindsay McCrory, and I am the manager of Parent and Family Programs. Our office is completely dedicated to supporting our tiger families just like you, which is why we host events like these Tiger Family Talks to give you lots of great information and resources to help support your tiger. I am from Covington, Louisiana. If we have any Louisiana families on here, I'm an in-state gal for you. And I am also an LSU alum. I loved my time here so much that I've made this a full-time job. So love working at LSU, especially with our tiger families. I see some things rolling in. So we have Prince George's County in Maryland, parent of a freshman. Welcome. We have Baton Rouge freshman, Shreveport freshman, Fort Worth, Texas freshman. I think freshman's definitely the theme of tonight. Y'all are definitely the ones who are going to be joining us. College Station. Go Tigers. I hope you have lots of flags in your front yard. Charlisa from Bowie, Maryland. So 2 Maryland families on here. Daughter is a freshman. I'm sure they loved See George, the LSU bound sign, if you had one of those. All the Aggie fans were probably pumped about that one. Trina's here from Powder Springs, Georgia, son of freshman. Awesome. Okay, so a lot of freshmen. Looks like we have a great group. Thank y'all so much. Okay, so we will get started then. Like I said, tonight's topic is all about supporting your tiger as they return home from the holidays. And so winter break's almost here. Thanksgiving break is really almost here. And so depending on when your tiger is coming home for Thanksgiving or after finals, if they're waiting and gonna stay here to take their finals while they're on campus, I'm sure you have a lot of questions about what that return will look like and just wanna make sure that you're prepared for the transition. Some families don't realize that it will be such a big transition, but I think that our panelists tonight, we have some current parents and some current students who will really be able to provide a great perspective. For some of you, you feel like you just dropped off your tiger, and it's hard to believe that it's been 4 months already. It's just crazy this semester has flown by like this. The transition can be different for all families and students. So they might want to sleep a lot when they get home. Maybe our panelists can tell you that. They might be bringing home a lot of laundry. They may have different expectations of their newfound freedom. So we're going to cover all of that this evening. We're going to give you some practical tips and really answer what questions you have about what to expect. So if you have questions throughout this, don't hesitate to put those in the Q&A on Zoom, or you can put them in the comments on Facebook. We're going to do our panel, and then afterwards at the end, we'll ask all of the questions that you might have. If you have any questions for a specific speaker, don't hesitate to put their name in the comments or on Q&A as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, stop my screen share. Okay. And I'm going to start our panel off. So The first person that I want to introduce is our student speaker. So we're joined by Avery Jenkins. She is an LSU ambassador. So Avery has a cute picture of a dog. Avery, you want to turn your camera on, go ahead and introduce yourself. We'll get started.
Hello. So like Lindsay said, my name is Avery Jenkins. I am a junior currently. I am also from Covington, Louisiana, so super fun. My majors are I am religious studies and sociology, and I have a minor in philosophy. Super fun and interesting. Yeah, super involved on campus, and go Tigers.
Go Tigers. All right, our next panelist is Kalita Black. Kalita is one of our parent panelists.
Good evening, guys. I'm sorry. I'm kind of running late tonight on a lot of things. I'm from Lawrenceville, Georgia. I do have a Tiger who is a junior this year, and I'll be glad to share lots of advice that you may have or may want to have with your student coming back home.
Thank you, Kalita. Ginger.
Hello, I'm Ginger Thorpe. I'm from Huntington Beach, California. My daughter is a sophomore and she's majoring in sociology as well with a criminal justice focus.
Awesome. All the way from California. Thank you. And then finally, Butch is also on the phone with us today. Oh, Butch.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Butch Caligari. I live in Houston, Texas. I graduated from LSU in 1982. I have 4 kids. My youngest one is the only one that's still in college. She is a senior at LSU, communications member, and a member of the Pi Phi sorority in the Greek system. I have another son who graduated from LSU, one from Auburn and one from the Citadel. And I'm happy to share whatever good and bad experiences I've been through with everybody here.
Thank you so much, Butch. I'd love if anybody is an LSU alum, go ahead and put that in the chat or in the comments on Facebook. I love whenever our Tiger families are also alums because you might even have some wisdom to share from your experience. So we'll just jump right in. My first question is for Avery. So Avery, what are you typically most excited about when you return home for the holidays?
Specifically seeing my family. I know that's pretty generic, but I tend to stay very busy throughout the semester. So coming home to my parents after not seeing them for a couple months is a really big deal to me. If your Tiger happens to be able to come home frequently or see you, a different answer would be getting to sleep during the breaks, because I know a lot of college students will first sacrifice sleep before for doing assignments and doing activities and stuff like that. So being able to take a break and relax is also something that I really look forward to. So yes.
Great points. We all love sleep, and it is the first thing to go as college students. You're right. So parents, I have a similar question. What are some of the things that you're most excited about or anticipate whenever your Tiger is going to be returning home for the holidays? We'll start with Kalita.
You know, the most basic thing is just almost like Avery, just being glad to see my son arrive back home. We kind of have a unique situation because Chandler is 8 years older than his youngest brother, who is 12. So his freshman year specifically, he was only 10. And so it was just euphoria in the house when Chandler arrived back home. And so that's probably the main thing, just see how he's changed, how he looks, because we are in outside of Atlanta. I said Lawrenceville, but just so you'll have a perspective, it's outside of Atlanta. So it's an 8-hour drive. So that's a long way for me. I know there's a lot of other people that are from a lot of other states, like California, but for me, it's all I guess you could say all relative, but it was a long way. So I hadn't seen him except one time during the semester that first year. And this year we haven't seen him at all, not in person. So he'll be hopefully home Thanksgiving if all holds well.
It's going to be such a great homecoming. I know you're excited. Definitely. Ginger, what about you? What are you excited about, or maybe think back to freshman year too when Amy first came home?
Well, similar to Kalita, we also have a younger one at home. So she's always very excited to see her big sister when she gets here, and just spending time with her while she's home, going just to do, the things that we always used to do together, go shopping or having dinner, all that good stuff. It's wonderful to finally get to be like, get to lay hands and give big hugs and see them at home. It's a wonderful thing.
It is, you're right. Lay hands is a phrase we hear a lot of families say. It's really funny. What about you, Butch?
The best thing is just being able to spend kind of some unscheduled, unspecific time watching TV, hanging out, sitting outside, walking around. Elizabeth and my wife will undoubtedly go shopping and, do things decorating the house and everything like that. For those of you with sons, it's going to be just like when they were in high school. You're going to say, how was school? And the answer is, it was fine. What did you do? Nothing. Okay. And if you haven't figured that part out yet, that means that everything's going just like it's supposed to. Okay. You're not going to get much more than that. But if you spend a little bit of time kind of watching TV with them and what have you, that'll soften up a little bit, and you can get some more information out of them, and you can kind of judge for yourself what's really happening, what's going on. But it's really that unscheduled time that you just get to hang out together that I always look forward to.
I love that. Kalita, you have a son, so is Chandler similar?
Chandler's similar. He will answer questions pretty good for us, but he does, the initial is always good. I'm fine. And so you have to start asking the open-ended questions to kind of get him to open up for you. One of the things that you were mentioning there, Butch, you were talking about, kind of what they've been doing. I think I used to always tell Chandler and my older son, I don't really have to ask a whole lot of questions because your grades will probably tell me exactly what you've done all
Exactly right.
So
Hey, that's
you are exactly right about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So before I dive in, I'd love to hear about that. How do y'all navigate those conversations? Avery, I'll have you go first. Does your family ask you about your grades? And how much do you share? I mean, what is that conversation like when you're home for the holidays?
So my mom asks me just about every other day about my grades and how my GPA is doing. And I'm honest with her. I'm not going to lie and tell her that I have an A in something, that I have like a C or a D or anything in, because sometimes like middle grades don't really reflect the type of grade that you like have in actuality. It's a little strange to kind of navigate. So I'm honest, my dad never really asks. He asks kind of at the end of the semester and he was like, how'd you do? And I'll tell him. And that's kind of the extent of that. But my mom always asks, but she asks in a way that's not like prying. She doesn't like keep pushing at it. And so I always found myself, since she was just kind of like calm and cool about it, to be able to open up to her pretty easily, and not feel weird sharing her like my stories about like going from high school and getting all A's and then like getting a C in college, and I was heartbroken. And so like her being very calm about that also really helped for me to just like share everything about my GPA. So yes.
Yeah, I think that's definitely helpful feedback. Do any of our parent panelists want to share?
I'll share. I mean, I could probably use some of Avery's mom's calm, perhaps, because not necessarily the different, just the grades coming in, but just listening a little bit more to my tiger as she shares her experience, and not being so quick to jump in and say, well, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? Part of the joy of being on, the family council is that we know that there's a lot of resources available for the tigers to use, for our tigers to use. And someone's like, well, did you reach out to the Center for Academic Success? Have you talked to the tutoring service? Have you done this? What have you done? And she's like, take a breath. Let me tell you my story. It's all going to end up fine. Here's where we are. And kind of like you said, Avery, like what happens, in the beginning is probably not what indicative of what will happen closer to the end of the semester. But just, we always keep in touch, and she always shares with me what's going on, which is great. And I do have a little nudge every now and then, like, hey, sounds like you, from what I hear, you're struggling just a little bit. You'll probably be fine, but maybe you should just reach out and see if there's a study group you can get involved in or something. Figure it out. I'm just here to listen. I'll practice that more, Avery.
We're all learning something. Even our panelists are going to get something out of tonight for sure. Okay, so my next question for our panelists is, what are some of the things that, or maybe changes that families may not be expecting when their student first returns home? And Ginger, since you're already on screen, I'll have you start first.
Sure. I think, you know, when she came home last year during Christmas time, and it was really tough. She didn't come home at Thanksgiving just because being out in California was just too far of a haul. So really getting home at Christmas time, and, you know, it's not just the laundry and the things like that. It was just, you know, I was expecting like, oh, like we're both home. Let's have breakfast in the morning, and let's, you know, are you going to go with me on my daily run and all these other things? Like I wanted a lot of togetherness, and she wanted some space because she had been on her own for so much. And she wasn't used to like having somebody constantly like, hey, what do you want to do? When are you going to do it? She just needed time to sleep and just kind of recover from that first semester or freshman year and be able to kind of process what was going on and kind of get back in the swing of being part of the family again. So it was a little bit difficult, but, you know, I also had to take a step back and say, okay, like I got to give her time to recover too.
Yeah, that's a good point. Butch, what about you?
They're going to be very different when they come back. Okay. Number one, they are more of an adult than they were when they left you and you dropped them off. Okay. They're not quite in the same place that you would like for them to be, but they're there. And for several months now, they've been used to deciding on their own when they come and when they go, what time they wake up, what time they eat, and all those sorts of things. As just part of natural growth and development, their internal body clock is on a different time regulation than ours is, than as adults, okay? They sleep later and they stay up later. And we all went through it. I can think back to when I did it and all the rest of the kids did it. So you have to be prepared for that and know that, you know what, to them, sleeping until noon just isn't a thing, okay? Drove me nuts. You know, I'd start banging stuff around just to wake them up, and that didn't go so well, okay, for either of us. So you have to know that going into it, that they're going to be on a different schedule. They're used to doing things on their own. And the discussion, the dialogue that you have to have with them has got to be grounded in, look, you're still a member of the family, and here's how our family works, okay? You've got to be respectful of the fact that they've got their own way of doing things now, and they've got to be respectful of yours. If you come unglued and yell at them or bang pots and pans around in an effort to wake them up, that's not showing them the respect that they need. And if you don't show it to them, there's no way they're going to show it to you. So you've got to develop that more mature relationship with them, okay? At the same time, there are things that are rules in your house that just don't happen, okay? And, you know, that may be running around the house with just your underwear on. And if that's one of your rules that you don't do that, you just have to kind of politely remind them that there are certain rules that are here that don't apply elsewhere. And when you're here, you follow those. Just like when I'm at your house, I got to follow yours. And I think if you approach it from that mature standpoint, you'll be a lot better off, okay? They're going to bring home a lot of laundry. They're going to bring home other things. Two things just to sneak in from our other questions. One of the things that they're going to be most happy about is home cooked meals. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to share those with them, okay? And that's a great time while you're sitting having one of those home cooked meals or something that they like, to ease into conversations about, hey, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? Okay. And then the other thing, talking about grades, I'll tell you, if they don't tell you much about about their grades, they're probably not very good. Okay. If they avoid the topic. And just like with the other parts of, you know, coming in and being respectful of them, I have found for me and for my family that the discussion to have is, look, as long as I'm going to be paying for it, you got to at least tell me what's going on. And if you don't want to tell me, I understand that. How are you going to pay for it next semester? Okay. You can't yell at them and say, you know, you didn't do this right, because chances are they know that. But you've got to, with respect, treating them as an adult, almost like you would with one of your employees. Hey, you didn't do X. How are we going to fix it? Because I'm not going to keep you employed if you don't do what you're supposed to do. And their employment right now is going to school, making whatever grades you say they should make.
All really great points. Thank you so much. I love your honesty and openness, but it's awesome. Kalita,
And
you're laughing along, so you go ahead.
And it's so funny because Butch, I promise I didn't jot down these things as you were talking. I wrote these things down earlier, and I had written down balance, but respect, open-mindedness with their newfound growth, and the house rules. Those are the 4 things I had written down to kind of talk about. So I'm kind of echoing and dittoing everything that Butch has said for the most part, but you do have to reach that balance. And I think, like, for instance, like my youngest one, he would just be ready to go, ramping and ready to go early in the morning. Well, Chandler wanted to sleep. And that lasted for a few days. And we all kind of settled into all of that. So I don't really have a lot to add because Butch really covered it all. But it is about the balance and the respect. Don't come in the house at 3 in.the morning when we are still working and your brother has to go to school, things like that. And we honestly didn't really have any problems with that transition of that respect in that way. We did have to have some conversations in terms of like the grades, in terms of, okay, how are your grades looking? They were looking good, and then we would just use the opportunity to support, okay, what would you have done differently this past semester to next year? What do you plan to do differently to improve what you started? And so it worked out pretty well for us. So I don't have a lot of like horror stories, because the I guess you could say the ground rules had been set many years ago, and so he kind of knew where to stand with respect on us, and at least in terms of the house rules.
Thank you. Avery, I'd love to hear your perspective. And did you have, to go further, any expectations of what your time would be like at home? Were you excited about, especially your freshman year, returning home, and then maybe your family had different expectations of what that time would be like?
For me, I think the biggest thing is to keep just an open line of communication, just to make sure, like Miss Kalita said, like, you can't come home at 3 a.m. because I have to get up and work at 8 in.the morning, and kind of making sure that they realize that, because going from a dorm or an apartment where you are in a room by yourself or with one other person who is also staying up late, also doesn't get up at 8 a.m. most likely, type of stuff, you just kind of have to gently remind them about things like that, because it is weird to go back into like a normal 9 to 5 type schedule when college is very much not a 9 to 5 type schedule. Also, one thing that I think Miss Ginger touched on was that she was always kind of like, hey, do you want to do this with me? Do you want to do that with me? And I think kind of easing into that a little more, and because I also want to spend time with my parents, but then also, especially now with still having some schoolwork done, like having to get done at Thanksgiving, and still having to do X, Y, and Z with whatever they're involved in, they still might need some time to themselves, or time to readjust, like back to their hometown, or back like under your roof. So if they say, no, I have to do this first, or I'd rather just kind of like sleep, kind of chill out, adjusting to college is hard. And it is kind of the best to, in my experience, to kind of ease back into staying like your normal routine with staying home, because after a couple days they're going to want to go to brunch with you, go on a walk, go to Target, and just like do random stuff, like spend time together. It just takes those like couple like buffer days.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point. So 2 questions. One, how much did you sleep? Like, what's a real amount, or how many days did you require of just don't talk to me, I have to sleep?
I never was like in the don't talk to me stage, because I kept as balanced as possible, which is not very balanced at all, freshman year, first semester. So I was on average getting like 4 to 5 hours of sleep at LSU because I was not used to time managing for college. And so when I was home, getting those like 8 and 9 hours was astounding. It was incredible. And so that was really kind of what I did. And it was still at odd times. But I think like 3 or 4 days of like kind of the readjustment period is what I took. And then after that, it was when I was ready, after I had kind of de-stressed, relaxed, kind of settled back in. And then I was like, oh, okay, I'm ready to start doing these normal things that we used to do or that we like talked about doing before I left.
That was my second question, so that's perfect. So about 3 to 4 days of adjustment period. Ginger, I'd love to hear from you. I know Amy wasn't ready to go on runs quite when she first got home. How much was she sleeping her last year for her freshman year? And how long did it take her to come around?
She slept a lot, and I think the thing is, and Butch talked about it. You know, the sleep. It's not a 9 to 5 day, right? So you really, you know, she was going to bed, you know, when she was in her dorm and all that stuff. You know, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever, and getting up to go to classes and do all the things she needs to do. And so when she came home, you know, I would be surprised to see like, oh, your light's still on in your room and it's 3 o'clock. What are you doing? Like, yeah, at school. She's watching movies or, you know, Snapchatting friends who are back home and all that good stuff. So she's still keeping in with her routine, but now she actually gets to sleep. She didn't have to get up and go to school the next day. So it was probably until, you know, noon, 1 o'clock, you know, for the first couple of days. And then all of a sudden it was kind of like she shook it off and was like, all right, she's re-energized and ready to re-enter the family, if you will. And we kind of joking around and we call it the re-entry period. There's an adjustment and we all have to kind of take a step back and breathe and go, and it's adjustment for all of us too, because we live our lives differently when she's not around as well. So, but I think it took like 2 or 3 days and then finally everything was like back to normal.
Okay, good to know. So it sounds like we're around the same time frame right now. Kalita, about how long did it take for Chandler for his freshman year to?
Yeah, it was about 2 or 3 days as well. And he would, when he first came home, also, I could just tell he was tired. You know, his eyes were like kind of puffy and things. And after a couple of days, he refreshed himself and he was ready to go, because he was never by nature a really, really late sleeper anyway. And so for him to sleep to 11 o'clock was like, wow. And then I also think for the parents out there, keep in mind the your time differences. There's like an hour time difference for us, and I'm sure for Ginger out in California is at a couple of hours, I would imagine. So they have to readjust their body to those time adjustments as well.
Good point. Butch, what about, since you have multiple tigers?
It took a couple of 3 days just to kind of wind down and get into the swing of things. And so I started just letting them do their thing for several days and let them kind of make the transition back into being at home. For those of us that have kids that are coming home at Thanksgiving, that'll probably happen about the Monday or so after Thanksgiving if they don't go back. But it's going to change again because they're going to have classes and exams that have to be factored into that. So I would anticipate that this year there's going to be more of them staying on that schedule because that's what they're used to. And that's how their mindset is for, hey, this is what I need to do to get through my classes and exams and that kind of stuff. And if it's worked for them up until now, why would they want to change that simply because they're at home? So I think it makes sense to allow that to happen and to know that that's going to happen. All right. One of the ways that I got them out of it after several days is I said, okay, here's the things you need to do while you're at home. Okay. You're here for the Christmas holidays. Your car needs new tires. Your car needs to get the oil changed and you need to go get it inspected. So I don't care when you do it, but you need to go. And if you want me to go with you, then we'll need to schedule it. Otherwise, you need to make sure that's done. And a few days later, I'd say, how's that coming? And, you know, give them the space that they needed to get it done. But them having some things to do, I think is good because it lets them know they're still part of the family, okay? Because there's stuff they need to do and help with Christmas cooking or whatever. But also with, hey, this is your car. I'm going to let you handle it. You know, you're a big girl. You can, or a big boy, as the case may be. You can do these things. Well, I haven't done them before. Well, now's a good time to learn. And you get to shift between being the parent to being more of a coach and a mentor. And if you embrace it, it's really a lot of fun. You know,
It is.
you can laugh about things that you couldn't laugh about before. Okay. And if you allow that kind of relationship to develop and grow just like they are, you'll find that your long-term relationship with them is going to be much, much better.
When Chandler came home, again, Carson was only 10 at the time, so he was still in elementary school. So I would incorporate him into the year-end parties that they would have, and he was always excited because his big brother from college was at his school to read to the kids or just participate in the activities that the teachers had. And that just kind of kept him busy too. And I would give him lots of errands to run for me during the day. Hey, I need this done, that done. And he would just kind of do that. And that was just to kind of keep him up and going and not get lazy on me.
It also ensures them that they're still welcome as part of the family.
That's true. Yes.
You know, and it lets them know that the way they are apart is still there, but it's changed. It's grown just like they have. At least that's what I intended. That's what my intent with it. And I think that's what Kalida's is and Ginger's and everybody else's, because that's what we're doing. We're learning, we're teaching them how to be adults, and we're teaching ourselves how to be adults with them, because we haven't been used to that. So it's a brave new world.
Yeah, you're right. I have a question about that adult comment that you can keep talking about for just a moment, but I'm going to come back to it. First, I want to mention that on Facebook, Candace is cracking me up that her student slept for 18 hours straight one time whenever coming home without moving last year. So that was a little frightening. Maybe none of our panelists have experience with that. For anybody watching, that could happen. So don't worry. They really do need a lot of sleep. And then I also want to say on that sleep comment that we had a webinar last week with mental health services in the Student Health Center about supporting your tiger's emotional wellness. And you're right. I mean, there's so much going on right now with our tigers. They may not be getting enough sleep, and they may not be thinking about taking care of their health. So if they're going to be home finishing out finals, I want to touch on that later, that there's a lot of resources that LSU offers to be able to have a balance. And Ginger, I know you love pointing those resources out to Amy. So you can give some tips, but it's about them taking care of themselves. And so maybe they won't have to sleep quite as long as 18 hours to make it through. I want to go back to the adult comment though. So were there any things that your students did that gave you a glimpse into them being adults that you weren't prepared for, or changes that you noticed in them when they came home?
You know, for Amy, I always just like point out to, a different level of maturity that I saw when she came home. She was much more confident in sharing her opinion about things, and kind of having a viewpoint in which to share it, which was great. You know, it takes conversations a whole different level. I love to see, like, this is the adult that I, get to see how she responds to things and how she reacts and what her viewpoints are. And it's really cool. And it was a nice level to change the way things happen. And like you said, Butch, like, all of a sudden she's just like, hey, these are the things that I need to do while I'm home. I have to get these 2 doctor's appointments in. I need to do this. I've made my appointments. Like, this is when I'll be going. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's never happened before, but rock on. Like, I'm happy to see that you're handling all this, and you've got some plans too while you're here that isn't just, hanging out with your friends or going to the beach. So it was cool to see that change, and that, us being able to have different discussions than I think we did when she was in high school, for sure.
About the only thing go ahead, Carly.
I was going to say, basically, I always kind of take the approach, I've had them from birth until 18 for me to instill everything that I hope that he can take to the next level with him, all 3 of my children. And so what was good to see was when he did come back home, that he had remembered his home training, so to speak. And with that home training, it did come that more responsibility, that he wasn't asking us for certain things to do for him. He was already taking initiative to take care of those things. And I think that was heartwarming to me, to know that the home training, he actually was listening, even sometimes when you didn't think your child is listening, they remember things. And that was just really, it made me proud, I guess I could put it that way. It makes you proud to know that your children actually were listening to you, and that they're ready to move on. And so you can, like Butch was saying, you start to have a different relationship with your child, and I think that's just a sign of them growing up.
You asked if there was anything that was remarkably different. The only thing I ever remember getting particularly antsy about with them is number one, coming in. You know, it's kind of, guys, you can't come in at 1 or 2 in the morning. Okay, we have to do stuff the next day, and although you say we don't have to wait up for you, we're going to, because that's what we do. All right, you can't change it. One day, 30, 40 years from now, you'll understand that, but you just have to trust me. You know, you can't do that because it's just too unsettling for us. And that's probably the biggest area that we had issues with. Other than that, it really wasn't real bad. And it's just kind of working through those things. But that's the toughest thing. And I was no different. You know, I went off to school and came back to Houston from Baton Rouge, and I wasn't coming in at 12 o'clock. That just wasn't happening until my dad explained to me why I was, you know, and the same concepts apply. And again, I think as long as you're respectful and truthful and candid about why it's a problem, I think they'll respect it. If you just say it's my rule, well, you know, that works when you're 10 or maybe even 14, but not when you're 19 or 20 and you really are an adult that can make all your own decisions. So that's what I had the most difficulty with.
Thank you. Avery, I'd love to know, did you notice anything that changed in yourself? Sometimes students don't always take notice of it, but were there things that you realized, wow, I'm more independent or more responsible whenever that first semester was that you came home?
I was always pretty independent, but in college it takes a whole new type of level when you are living on your own, especially if it's a couple hours away, because being independent in high school kind of constitutes like working and doing different like clubs and stuff like that, but you still come home at a certain time. But in college, you're completely free to do whatever it is that you feel like, essentially, whether that be a good decision or a bad decision. And so that kind of was interesting in me. I also became a lot more sociable, which is weird because I used to be like so much of an introvert, and now I found that like making friends in my classes and making friends like on campus has really helped me. And so I started to do that more and put myself out there. So that also changed. And my relationship with my parents in general changed pretty much completely. Like Mr. Butch was saying, like they started treating me as an adult, and so we would have that like open line of communication, and it wasn't like, oh, just because I said so. It was like, I'm telling you this because I care about you and because there's this specific reason. And just me being honest and open to hearing that, because I know sometimes if you try and reason with somebody that's a teenager or in high school, or even if it's your freshman tiger that just came home, they don't really want to hear it because they're like, oh, well, I can do this all by myself. But really just trying to explain to them why you want them to listen, why you're doing these things, because we do listen, even if you think that we don't, we are. So yeah.
Awesome. I am so glad that you're listening. And it's great to know that you became more sociable. I'm sure your family really noticed all of that stuff. Okay, so I want to know, we touched on this a little, but does anybody have any experiences of conflicts or difficult conversations where your tiger was like, I have my freedom, and you kind of had to, approach that conversation? Or what are your tips if they are met with if any of our parents on here are met with some resistance?
Not really have any true conflict that where we had to sit down and have a real heart-to-heart on some things. But I guess if I had to give any advice, is do your best not to alienate your tiger. because you want to keep that line of communication open, not only while they're home with you, but when they're away, because things can happen. And you want them to be able to feel comfortable, to know that they're not going to get chewed out no matter what you tell them. Now, you as the parent can't always react the way you feel when they give you that information, but you have to be able to process it so that when you talk to them, even though you may be mad at a hornet, you have to make it, I guess you could say, you have to, again, reach that balance to where you can say, okay, we'll talk about this later, but you just don't want to overreact. And you don't want to, like I said, you just don't want to alienate your tigers, because you have to keep that, or you should want to keep that line of communication open with them while they're away, because they're still going to need you. And at the end of the day, as I always tell my children, your parents are going to be the ones that are going to be there for you, period. So.
I'll echo that. We never had any big knockdown, drag out fights or anything like that. But the times that were tense were talking about grades, and at some point in time saying, hey, look, we need to talk about this, okay? What Kalita said is absolutely correct. Yelling and screaming doesn't work like it used to, okay? They're not as afraid anymore because they've been out in the world a little bit and they understand how it works. You know, when you're 12, 13, 14, even 16, you know what? You can scare them and you know, get them to start thinking differently. Now you can't. You know, one of the things that they learn at school is how to think and how to function and how to grow up and how to be responsible for themselves. And so when they're not, you have to coach them on what they need to do that and fit in. And if the only way you coach is by yelling and screaming and calling them names, that only lasts for so long. You got to teach as well as coach, and that's part of it. One of the things that Avery said that is very true, they do listen to you, but even more than that, they watch. And if it's okay for you to yell and scream, you're telling them it's okay for them to respond that way to you. So that does no good. If you want them to respond maturely and civilly and responsibly, you've got to do that. And although they are adults, they're still learning, and you've got to take the lead in doing that. You have to be the big person there. And like Kalita said, that's not always easy. You know, when you find out that they haven't been to French class but 3 times in the last 8 weeks, which is what I had to tell my parents. Let me tell you, that doesn't play in Peoria. You know, that does not go over well at all. And I knew it wasn't going to go over well. And same thing with one of my kids when that happened. You know, they knew it wasn't going to go over well. And so I remembered what I went through. And with them, I said, well, we're going to talk about this. Why is it a bad plan? And what are you going to do about it? You know, I think this year it's also going to be very difficult. Okay. For most of you that have freshmen, they've been in the dorm, so they've been able to be a little bit more social perhaps than other folks. My daughter is miserable right now because she decided she was going to minimize her contacts. Most of her friends have all already tested positive and gotten COVID, so now they're like, I'm done, I got the antibodies, I'm going out. And she's not, so she's miserable right now. And, you know, there's going to be some of that going on, and they're going to be worried about what's happening. And, you know, that's a whole new dimension that no one, I think, has ever faced, at least nobody alive, you know, going through something like this. And I think that, you know, you kind of got to watch for that when they come home too, because some of it might be a response to that, not knowing what to do or what to expect and not really knowing how to verbalize that.
Thank you, Butch. I do want to ask you, Avery, when you first went home your first year, what was the transition like as far as how much balance you had between spending time with your family and doing those normal traditions that your family expected you to take part in versus spending time with your friends?
That was definitely a hard thing to learn because not a lot of people from my hometown ended up going to LSU. A lot of them ended up going to a college that was like an hour and 20 minutes closer. So it was a lot easier for them to do that. And so going home and seeing them, at first I kind of put that as a priority because I was like, oh, well, I talk to my parents all the time. And so it didn't feel as disconnected as I did with the people that I went to school, that I graduated high school with. And then coming home, I have a little brother, and realizing how much he had grown, how much my parents had changed, how much they had happened in their lives, and being like, oh, this is also something that I need to take into account. I think just reminding your tiger, be like, hey, I know that we talk on the phone either every day or once a week or however often you call them or text them, but I haven't physically seen you in months. So just reminding them, be like, your friends haven't physically seen you in months, but I also haven't physically seen you in months, even though it may not feel that same way. So that's just kind of, again, going off of that open communication type of thing, just making sure that they understand kind of that they should, not kind of, that they understand that they should balance the friend and family social aspects, because that's something that you don't always think about. And it's also a strange and like balancing beam thing to learn.
Thank you. Ginger, I'd love to hear your feedback on that same subject. Do you have any suggestions for our families about how to have a conversation? Did you talk to Amy ahead of time about, how much time you expected to spend with her versus balancing time with her friends?
We talked about it because kind of probably like Avery, you and your parents, we talk almost every day. And I know that she keeps in contact, with some of her friends from high school and all of that good stuff. And so coming home, I really wanted to make sure that she knew, like, hey, I want you to see all your friends. I want you to be able to go and do things and spend time with the people who were really close to you in high school as well. But, we need some family time. We need to figure out like what works for us and what doesn't. And, I think part of it, knowing that, she sleeps in, right? So it's not like she's hanging out with us in the morning and stuff like that. Really, I just asked that, hey, unless there's something specific going on, we should all be having a meal together at night. And let's make sure we have dinner, and then you can go see your friends, or you can go and do other things. And while we didn't use the word curfew per se, I have a preferred time during the week that we'd like you to be home because of when we have to get up for work in the morning, and your little sister still has to go to school. So we need you to kind of recognize that and understand that, we just have to find some balance. And she was, at first, I think she thought like, well, how about I do dinner with you guys like 3 nights a week, and then I go out with my friends? And I'm like, we'll figure it out. This isn't like a hard and fast rule that we need to play by, but I'm just saying, like, let's figure out what the expectation is. So that way I'm not irritated that I don't see you, and your little sister is not wondering where you are every day. And that way we can figure it out. And it worked out pretty well too. I would say, we had dinner almost every night together, and she went and saw her friends. But I think also too, just like even just coming home from college, a lot of her friends stayed on the West Coast, and they had like bigger groups down here. So I do think it was a little different. I think she expected to just like jump back in with her friends and kind of things stay the same. But those friendships, while they, you still communicate quite often, they don't stay the same. So I think she started balancing things out a little bit more, and she was like, you know what, I'd actually rather spend more of my time with my family while I'm home. And, and let's do stuff together. I was like, hey, I'll take it. Every day of the week, I'll take it.
Hey, Ginger, I'll add to that. What they'll find is that as their friends have gone to school at different places, okay, and you're from out of state, Khalil's from out of state, so am I. So for our kids, when they'd come in, most of their friends went closer places, okay? So they're going to be in a very different place. They're in a very different culture. They're in a very different environment than what they're used to. Certainly LSU versus UCLA is miles apart,
Yeah.
LSU versus Auburn is a lot more similar, and that's, an hour and a half from Atlanta. But, LSU, Florida, very, very different. LSU, Maryland, very, very different. If they went to Penn State or Notre Dame or wherever, whole different culture, whole different environment. And so their friends are going to change, and they're going to change and not even realize it. And they're going to struggle with that. They're not going to know because so-and-so is now going to be more snooty than they were, or, now into drugs, or now drinking too much, or all sorts of things. And they're going to have to process how to deal with that because it's a big change from what they were used to.
I couldn't have said that any better, Butch. Like,
Yep.
I 100% agree. It happens.
I agree.
Yeah, I've always said to my daughter, because we've moved around quite a bit when my daughter's grown up for my job. And so she's had a series of friends over her life. And then you always say, like, during high school, you don't remain friends typically with that large group. And each year it's gotten a little smaller, and, but better connections with those folks that she has remained close with too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to transition just a little bit. So I want to talk about finals now. So if your tiger is coming home to complete finals from home, so they'll be there for Thanksgiving break through the rest of the semester, what tips do you have as parents for how to support your tiger doing classes online and finals from home?
I will say, because we have a small house and there's 4 of us who are going to school, who will be going to school and working from home in our small little house. You don't think about it, but check your bandwidth. Make sure you have like the internet router extender, whatever it is that we had to buy to make sure that in her bedroom she's got, the best bandwidth as you would have closest to the modem. Things that you don't kind of think about to support, like, that's really important, because there's nothing worse than, oh my gosh, I can't get onto my class, and what do I do? Like, I have to be on here and I have to get this stuff done. So, it sounds a little nerdy, but go around and check, like, and make sure that, the internet works from each room and that you can get on a Zoom call, practice Zoom calls with each other. That's what we did. We actually went through, and my husband would call me on a Zoom and I'd be like, yep, it's good. Like, okay, we're every room that we're in, we have the bandwidth, so she'll be fine when she comes home and needs to get on there for her finals. But also, understand too that they have a way that they've been studying, or a process that they use for their classes, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? This is something that, they've got certain things, maybe they, grab a cup of coffee before they start, or they are, need to eat a meal before they can sit down and do things, or they've got to break it up into sections. Now's not the time for you to tell them what they're doing wrong or how you would do it, because it doesn't really matter. Finals are coming, and they've got to be ready and prepared to do what they need to do to get into the zone that they need to be in to take the classes. I do say, if they think like, hey, I'm still struggling just a little bit, reach out. There's so many resources. Open up the LSU page, get on the calendar for the Academic Center for Success. I always say it wrong, Lindsay. I always mix up the letters and how they go, but Academic Success Team, I know that's who they are. And reach out, find people, ask for additional help. I told my daughter, I said, this year more than ever, you need to be reaching out to your professors, because you've got to make that connection somehow, whether that's, just via a couple of emails, like, hey, what, if things are a little spotty, it's because I'm working from home now, and whatever it is, but make sure that you've got some connections with your professors or the TAs, and you've got some resources there too.
I agree. They got to do it their way.
They have to do it their way.
Yeah.
What about, I'd love to ask y'all then, Avery, you can start us off. What about stress levels? So, I mean, anxiety is high. Finals week can cause a lot of stress, even if you're not an anxious student. It's just a lot going on. So with students doing that at home, they may be likely to take that out on their parents, or just kind of walk us through that, Avery.
Okay, so I am an anxious student, as it is during a normal semester. So it's hard to completely go home after Thanksgiving and take finals at home, because I know personally, like, I have my routine. I'll go to a coffee shop or the Union or something like that, and I'll sit in a similar area. I'll drink coffee. I'll study, get work done, or like in my apartment or a dorm, they'll usually like sit at their desk. They'll have a routine, whether it's they'll go like buy a drink from the vending machine or they'll go buy coffee or something like that. They have those small little rituals that even when they're thrown off, that can also increase stress level. So I think just trying to keep it as normal as possible. And also just honestly being there for moral support is the best thing for me. Just being like, this is a crazy semester. It's not what you expected. It's not what your professors really expected, and that's okay. And to just kind of take a step back and take a breather, really just acknowledge the fact that this is not the semester that anybody was expecting, and that the struggles and making sure that you have the right bandwidth and that your Zoom works and that you're not like super like spotty and that your professor can't hear you is stuff that you've never really had to check before, but making those adjustments to make sure that you have the best setup that you can at your house, so that it can be as smooth of a transition as possible.
My tiger actually, and I'll go back to the spring semester, he literally came to us with a PowerPoint of how he needed to go back to his apartment to take his finals for for the spring. And he's just a very structured kid, and he doesn't like a lot of disruption. And I know that, and I know that's his personality. And so, of course, after his presentation, he had sold me on, yes, it's safe for him to go back to do his studies there. And so that's what we have planned this year. So I don't really have a lot to contribute in terms of being at home, but just support them and however it makes them comfortable. Because even Chandler, being a guy, gets anxious on finals weeks. And so he does plan to go back to his apartment to finish up the semester there, to do his finals, just so he'll be comfortable in his space. And so we're going to respect that, and he'll be fine with that. I guess I wanted to add one other little quick thing that I know Chandler faced his freshman year is got to the finals, and I think it was a surprise to them sometimes, the exam that they have on those finals. So if there's any way that your tiger can, like Junior was saying, get some advice, how do we take these exams, because they may be totally shocked, and then their grades, they're going to be shocked by their final grade, which could of course impact their overall grade of GPA. So definitely talk to your tiger about preparing for the finals, and if there's anything that's being offered extra, have them to participate.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I also just wanted to mention to your tigers to take what their professor says about their final exam to heart. Essentially, if your professor says that their exam is going to be hard, or that they need to start studying for it, or that it's essay-based, they really need to do research into it, it's a project, they really need to put the time and effort into it. If they want the grade that they're expecting, then they need to take that. Because I know my freshman year, I was like, oh, well, all the other exams were fine. Like, I was fine. It's going to be no big deal. And then I took my first final, and I was like, oh, no, he wasn't lying. He was true. Like, he was, like, telling the truth. So to just make sure that they have that kind of, like, that acknowledge that that's probably going to happen. And then also, if their professor hasn't mentioned anything, to ask. I've never asked a professor a question at LSU where they either didn't want to answer or didn't answer completely honestly with me. They've always just been straight up and told me how it was going to be, what the questions were going to be like, how I should prepare. Your tigers can email their professor and ask them how to prepare if they just have absolutely no clue. And professors are always willing to help, so they're not going to say no.
My daughter, I did ask my daughter, just real quick, I did say, hey, what advice would you give to people for their first semester of exams? And she was like, extra credit is not an option. Like, you do all the extra credit, because there's going to be some surprise on one exam and you're going to regret not doing whatever additional credit is offered.
Also,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, I'm so sorry.
Oh, go ahead. That is a good point. I do want to echo what Avery said about emailing professors or reaching out to professors, but I also want to make the statement that students can't wait until the day before the test or the final exam to do that. A lot of our Tigers don't realize how they need to be more proactive. So Avery, you can say it from a student's voice about reaching out early.
Yes. I started building those bonds and making those relationships early in the semester. I would go to office hours for my professors. I created a great bond with one of mine specifically, and I'm planning on going to law school after I graduate LSU. He ended up, after I went and saw him a couple times and we talked about course material, offering to write me a letter of recommendation. And so even within stuff that isn't just about their course, like if they're planning on going to med school or law school or PT school or anything like that, they can have those bonds and reach those connections that they're going to need. But definitely starting early, because they're going to get an influx of emails right before finals week. They might not be able to respond to all of them. If you email them the night before an assignment is due, they might not see it before the assignment is already due, and then you're going to be kind of stuck without a solution. And then also, especially with the Zoom semester, if you create the bonds first and you let them know if you don't have that great of internet, or if your Zoom is kind of spotty or something like that, and then something does happen to go wrong on a class day or with an assignment or something like that, they usually are much more open to extending something or helping you out with that if you already expressed concern or already have spoken to them about something like that.
And send your Tigers some little treats that last week. They'll appreciate that. If you know their favorite snack or just a favorite dessert or something, just that they might just be a bar candy. Just send them something to let you know that you're thinking about them and supporting them during that time.
I love that so much, Kalita. Kalita is the queen of care packages, y'all. You'll have to see some of her pictures. But if your Tiger is going to be home for Thanksgiving break and staying through finals, same thing applies. I feel like students, and Avery, you can echo this, just eat a ton while studying and they're stressed. And so if they have some healthy options too, we're looking for that balance, but also some of their favorite desserts, sweets, just to help power through. That would be a really helpful extra step as a family member to support them through the stressful time of finals.
Yes, I'm definitely a stress eater. If your Tiger is not, they will probably become one in college because it's just a coping mechanism to deal with finals and midterms and exams, to kind of bring that comfort. Or if you live somewhat close and are able to send them with like a meal or like leftovers or something like that little bit of comfort will help them push through that last little bit of studying, the last page of their paper, or getting up and taking their final. So any little, this also kind of goes with that moral support, any little things that you can do for them really does make such a difference, because stress levels do run so high with finals.
Okay, I'm going to open it up now for questions from the parents and families that are watching. So go ahead and put those. You can use the Q&A, or you can use the chat or the comment feature below on Facebook Live. And while you're typing in your questions, I'm going to ask our panelists today, is there anything that we didn't get to touch on or last minute advice, tips that you have for families?
Be patient.
Do what?
Be patient. Be patient.
Love on
it's a
your
new
Tigers.
Yes, love on them.
Don't be surprised if they're more anxious to see their dog or cat than you, at least at first, because they're really going to miss those animals.
That's a great point. That's one of my favorite things when I see everybody posting on the LSU Parents Facebook group with reunited with their dog or their cat. It's
Yeah.
so cute.
Yeah. They've really missed those while they've been away, and they won't want to admit it, but when they get back, they'll be excited. When they get home, they'll be excited. So don't be too upset if they go to them before they go to you.
I'll also ask y'all too while we wait if there are any other questions. I have another question is about the return back to campus. So it feels like it's a long winter break, and that's exciting, and there's so much time to spend quality time together, and you're so excited for our families watching for that moment to get here and can't wait for it. But what is it like when your tiger has to come back to Baton Rouge, back to campus? Were they ready to leave? Were you ready for them to leave? And how did you say goodbye 2.0?
I wasn't ready for Chandler to leave because I miss him a lot, and nor was his younger brother. I will say the younger brother didn't cry as hard or as long when Chandler left the second time, but the tears are still there. Even now, I get a little teary when he leaves. I think it's just the motherly part of me. Maybe dad's too. You have to tell us, Butch. But I get a little weepy when he's getting ready to go back. And he's a junior this year, so I still get a little weepy. But again, you push them out, and I think what gives you some peace is, in my case, is he seems so happy on campus and has really transitioned very well, new friends, very involved, and you want that to continue. If he had come home and was sad and seemingly having problems, I would have been a little. But he's happy. He's happy in Baton Rouge on the LSU campus, and so that just gives me peace and joy. Even though I may be sad inside, I try not to cry in front of him.
I love that. But you're right. It's difficult no matter what age they are, for sure.
Dads do get sad. We get sadder when our daughters leave than when our sons leave. Okay. The more they do it, the easier it gets. Okay, because they're coming back, especially when you see them grow and develop and mature, and enables you to be proud of them. Okay. I think what we have to remember is that the tears are partially tears of sadness because they're going to be away, but they're also tears of joy at how much they're growing and developing and becoming fine young men and women. And they're happy tears as well. We have to sort that out just like they do. It also depends what else is going on in your house, how weepy everyone gets, but this is our fourth. They're all about 3.5, 4 years apart. And so sometimes if it's been particularly stressful, it's like, don't you need to go back to school now? But then a few days later, you miss them again.
Yeah, I think it wasn't as hard, I think, for me when Amy left after Christmas break. And I think that's because, one, we had already made plans for the spring family fling. So I already knew, like, yay, I'm going to see you in March. I'm super excited. We already had like that sort of plan in place to be together. And you can kind of break it down between January and March. And you're like, that's not so bad. Like, that's doable. I can see you then. And that's exciting. And I think too, like Kalita said, she's just so happy there. Like, how can I be sad that she's leaving when she's someplace she loves and is growing so much?
Yeah.
I might make myself weepy thinking about it.
Avery, what about you? When you go home, remember that freshman year, were you ready to come back to Baton Rouge? Were you like, okay, I love my family, but I've had enough? Or were you pretty sad to go?
I was definitely ready to go because I had made so many friendships at LSU. I had gotten involved in so many things that I just love and adore. And so I was absolutely ready to go back. But after I did go back those first few days, I called my parents a little more than I usually did. I texted my mom a lot. And whenever she didn't answer me, I got pretty sad because I got used to seeing her all of the time again. And even though when I was leaving, I was ready to go back and get back into my routine, it still was another adjustment to go back to seeing your parents at the end of the semester or only maybe once in the middle and then going back to FaceTime and texting. So you're probably going to get a few more calls from your tiger after they go back in January because they get used to you again and then they have to readjust without you again. Even though the second adjustment is much easier than the first, it's still a readjustment.
I love hearing the students' perspective for all this. It's been really nice to see the balance and just the differences between all of your answers. So if anybody has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A or the comment section, and would love to address those. I want to thank our panelists so much. I think you had such valuable advice and tips to share, and I appreciate your honesty and openness about your experience, because it's true. If you've lived it before, then you have probably the best advice. So thank you so much to our panelists. I have just a few things I want to share as a wrap up.
Hey, Lindsay, before we do, I have one question or one thing just I thought I'd throw out there, okay? You know, this year they're not going to have Mardi Gras break, spring break, things like that the way they have in the past. And I know my daughter's already started telling me how life is so unfair because of that. And, you know, so I would expect some comments or some dialogue about that from your Tigers. You know, what are they going to do? I don't know if y'all saw the news today, but they canceled all the parades in New Orleans for Mardi Gras. They're only going to have that Tuesday off anyway. And so that's going to create some, I don't want to say stress, but some disappointment on the part of a lot of students who were looking for their first getaway to a week of debauchery as adults. And, you know, they'll be disappointed now. So you'll hear some feedback on that.
No, that's a great point to make, and navigating those conversations. And I think that's a great segue into our office being here as a resource for families. Any questions that you have, any way that we can help you support your Tiger, give you the right information. If we don't know the answer, we will find it for you. But we are really your one stop or your first stop as far as a line of communication with the university. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. Additionally, if you have any specific questions for our panelists who joined us tonight or want to continue these conversations with them, get their feedback, please don't hesitate to email us at lsufamily@lsu.edu, and we'll connect you with our panelists that joined us. All of our panelists are part of our family association and our family council for our parent panelists. So I want to thank them for being a part of that and so involved. And I also want to thank everyone who's been joining us for all of our Tiger Family Talks this fall. We have had 5 great talks, and this is our last installment of the semester. But I'm excited to host more of these in the spring. We'd love your feedback. So if you have any topics that you're thinking about that would be beneficial, we want to continue these and make sure that they are helpful and we're giving you the tools and information that you're looking for when you want it. So we hope that you'll check out some of our recordings on our website. Carly just put those in the chat. You can see all of our past webinars in case you missed any of them. And we'll put the recording up of this one in case you tuned in a little bit late. So joining the Family Association, as I mentioned, is a great way to get involved if you're not already a member. There are lots of really wonderful benefits, and it creates an even deeper partnership with our office and the university. There's also great things that come with your membership, discounts that you get on campus, access to apply for scholarships for your student. And that's all, that information is listed on our website at lsu.edu/join. We linked it in the chat for you. And then it's Thankful Tiger Family Week. And in the season of Thanksgiving and gratitude, we always want to know how much we appreciate your families and your support, but especially this week, we're hosting events and programming just like this to make sure you know that we love you, LSU loves you, and that your Tiger also does too. So tomorrow night, if you're part of our family association, we hope you tune in for our bingo night. We're gonna have a lot of fun. It's at 6 p.m. and we're gonna put in the chat how to register for bingo and also see all the details for Thankful Tiger Family Week. Thursday, we'll wrap up Thankful Tiger Family Week with a Tigers Give Thanks. So tune in to our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/LSU LSU family, and you can check out all of the sweet notes that your students are writing about you as far as thanks and appreciation for all that you do to help them as Tiger family members. Here's a short QR code. If you want to hold up your phone and you take a picture of this, then you can complete our survey to let us know your feedback from tonight's event, and also give us that input for sessions that you want to see for next semester's webinars. So we'll leave this on a screen for a minute. It's also in the chat, so you can go ahead and fill out our quick little survey, just a couple of minutes.
Lindsay, there's a question in the Q&A. I'd like to, it's regarding encouraging and supporting your Tiger.
Yes,
I'd like to add a little feedback there for the gentleman, or I'm not even sure who it is, but nonetheless, there's a lot of activities and organizations to get involved with. My son is heavily involved with student government on campus, and right now he's director of student outreach. And have your Tiger to look into the student government, look him up, Chandler Black, and he can give you lots of good advice on where to reach out to different organizations or what even is involved. I know they've been doing things on campus to try to encourage socialization, even though it is on a smaller scale. So you might want to reach out to student government or even the family association again, and just have your Tiger reach out and say, hey, I need some help. I want some encouragement. What can I do? What are some areas I can get involved in? Because you don't want your Tiger to be so disillusioned that they don't want to come back to campus.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Kalita. I was just on a roll. But if you want to continue that conversation, please email our office and we will connect you. The LSU ambassadors that Avery is a part of have a program to help connect students. Student government, as Kalita mentioned, her son Chandler is a part of, has a program to connect students and really get them plugged into resources. And then our office has been meeting with students and trying to see what they like and how we can make this more of a community and really help them feel like they're a part of LSU and settling in. It's been a difficult transition for a lot of students. We've kind of talked about it. It's been a recurring theme through all of our webinars that we posted. And so I think it's helpful to talk with us, and we can share, plenty of information of, trying to get them plugged in. And Butch is also giving out his cell phone number, so you can call him.
It's my office number.
Oh, office number, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, I don't answer my cell phone number.
Well, and I was just going to add too, my daughter's really involved over at the UREC in some club, like she plays club volleyball and has met a bunch of people, and I know they're still doing a lot of different sports and things there. So if your your Tiger isn't interested in anything like that, going to the UREC, working out with folks, going to play basketball or volleyball, there's always a pickup game going on. So I highly suggest that too.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think also we can put together some, probably a guide for a lot of families to think about more resources to encourage your Tiger to utilize. All right, y'all. Well, thank you again for joining us. If you have any questions, please keep putting those in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll stick around to answer those. But I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. I hope your Tiger has safe travels home whenever they decide to travel home. We hope that they finish finals strong and that they have a great rest of the fall semester. As always, we appreciate you and we appreciate your Tiger. So go Tigers and have a great evening.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.